right, so for our demonstration today, we are going to be in a detect-only mode. Prevention demos are fairly boring. It just shows the action and then it stops it. So we're going to let the attack actually proceed through. And on the left, we have an unmodified Pixel 2, and on the right, an instance of Kali Linux. And what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and trick the end user to connect to our Wi-Fi network that Kali Linux is serving up, and then install some malware. So we can see Android is already being helpful, and it's suggesting that we connect to an open, unsecured Wi-Fi network. So we're going to go ahead and do that like an end user would and see what happens. And immediately Sentinel-1 warns us that we're doing something unsafe. It's telling us that, hey, we're connected to an unsecured Wi-Fi, which means that we can be man-in-the-middled, credentials can be harvested, and a lot of other bad things can happen. So we likely shouldn't do it. Though we're going to act like a standard end user, and we're going to keep on going, even though we've been warned. And we can come in and we can see. We can go to any regular website like go.com and it works like it should. But because the attacker controls the Wi-Fi access point, we can dictate where we want the end user to go. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to spin up a malicious server. And when the end user goes to go.com, we're going to redirect them to a different website. We're going to choose my mobile device right here to attack and get our attack server spun up. And while we're doing that, I'm just going to open up a new tab. And we're going to go to go.com. And we can see now, rather than taking us to the Disney website like it should, we're redirected to our attacker server. And we say, hey, here's an Amazon gift card. Click here. So let's go ahead and do that. And Sentinel-1 immediately warns us. They say, hey, you just downloaded an APK that appears to be malicious. Don't open it. We're not going to listen. We're going to keep on going and actually open it. And at this point, we're offered a couple of different options. We can install it with the Android package installer, or we could have Sentinel-1 install scan, take a look at it, and see if it's malicious. Spoiler alert, if we send it to Sentinel-1, it's going to tell us what we already know, that it is malicious. So we're just going to go ahead and install it. And again, Sentinel-1 warns us. It says, hey, you're side-loading an app. That's insecure. It tells us that, hey, that app that you just installed is malicious. You shouldn't do it. And once we actually allow the install to go through, it connects back up to our C2 server, and we can now do some malicious actions. So real quick, we can upload music and play it if we want to. We can record the microphone, get SMS messages, the calls, contacts, or we can even get a picture. Let me pose for this one. And there we go. And so it's that easy to take a device from a secured state to an insecure state and compromise it quite drastically. So we've got a couple of different options. Before we jump to the management console, let's look at what we can offer the end user. Like all mobile devices, we want to give the end user power. That's what they expect from their mobile devices. So we give them choices. They can uninstall the application and remediate each one of these malicious actions. They can disconnect the Wi-Fi, for example, or uninstall the application and further protect themselves. But we want to make sure that the end user, we want to tell them what's happening on their device so that they're empowered to take the actions needed to protect it, because that's what most people expect. All right, let's go ahead and pivot over to the management console and see what it says. We're going to go ahead and start in the threat log area. And for any folks who are used to the Sentinel-1 console, this is where you would see things like incidents appear. And we're just going to filter by my device ID so that I only look at my alerts. And here we can basically get a really quick understanding of what happened to the device from start to finish. We can see that there was an unsecured Wi-Fi network. This was a low-level alert. It's not something that we want to worry too much about, but it is concerning. But then we immediately notice that it's a rogue access point. And then after that, we see our suspicious Android app being downloaded, then side-loaded, and so on. So we can very quickly understand what happened in this attack, and we know that this attack is truly malicious. So let's take a deeper look at some of the data that were offered. All attacks are tied to MITRE, and so up here at the top, we can speak the common language of MITRE TTPs and see that we have initial access, persistence, credential access, and so on. And then we can scroll down and see exactly what happened, where the device was at the time of the attack, and even things like nearby networks and connections between the mobile device and the internet. Now at this point, we have a number of different actions that we could take. We could tell the end user they need to remediate this, but most people are going to want to set up automated actions, and we have a number of different ways to do that. If I come over here to policy, and then take a look at our threat policy, we've got a number of different choices. The first is, anytime I see an alert of a specific type, I can choose whether or not to notify the end user. So if, for example, for the rogue Wi-Fi access point, maybe I don't notify them, maybe I just log it to the console. Then we can choose a device action that takes place. So for example, if somebody again connects to that rogue Wi-Fi, we can actually disconnect it and knock them offline because that's an insecure action, and then send them a custom message saying, hey, you're not allowed to connect to insecure Wi-Fi. And then as a third step, we can even choose to take actions from the MDM if there is one in the environment. So we can send a request to the MDM that, hey, we need to go ahead and lock this device if the attack is severe enough. So it's that easy to set up custom actions to take place when there are various threats that happen on a device.